We are standing in the Tuvalu Electricity Corporation. Here's their front office, but behind me is what we're actually interested in. Behind me is the generator for most of the island. Yes, there's been some investment in solar, but up until this point in time, that investment has been minimal compared to the amount of power they use. They still use this giant fossil fuel generator to produce power for the entire island. Now, the interesting part about this is that in relation to the space that Tuvalu has, this is a large percentage of it. This is one of their largest buildings and installations, aside from maybe the government building and public works. But the crucial thing to understand is that in this day and age, you cannot have anything without power. They understand the importance of that and have been investing in this into the future. There have been many solar initiatives here in Tuvalu and many other initiatives, but the problem that the country has is they don't have any oil resources, they don't have any natural resources per se, but they have to import all of their power. So the future of Tuvalu is really found in more of a renewable energy that they can produce here that would lower the cost eventually and lower the annual cost of the power as opposed to something this giant. Now, this plant is a huge plant and is relatively new, but it's important to remember this may not be the future for Tuvalu. This is really interesting because behind me are the actual generators that produce the power for Tuvalu. But in front of those generators is a car or a bicycle that is solar powered. This right here shows the two different initiatives that are actually on foot in the country of Tuvalu. The first is those fossil fuels to produce bulk power. The second is that transition. And it is important to remember that both those things are present in Tuvalu. The public library is very similar to the public library in the United States, whereas it has books and records dating back for years for the country of Tuvalu. But the interesting part about the library currently is that they're currently undergoing operations to modernize. What are they doing? Well, they're digitizing a lot of the files as well as categorizing them and as well as actually cataloging them in a way that they can find. Up until this point in time, the organization of the library has not been the best, but they are taking massive steps forward to fix that, and it's just another instance of showing how Tuvalu is developing into the future, even with something like their library. Tuvalu, being a Christian country, understood one thing, and that was how imperfect this world is. In fact, one of their areas with the most foreign investment and the earliest foreign investment is actually their health sector. In fact, they have poured millions and millions of dollars of other people's money into their health sector specifically. Behind me is Princess Margaret's Hospital. This hospital right here actually boasts 2 different ambulance ports and countless different health facilities inside of it. It's a very high-tech hospital for the country of Tuvalu, and it's just one of the instances of when they are focusing on bettering their surroundings and bettering their country through relatively modern technology. Right after the flood in the book of Genesis, there's a section that details several different laws that were given to the people. And in fact, these are illustrated in what is called the Noahide Code. But one of these laws was to build governments and court systems to rule your fellow man. Now, behind me is actually the courthouse of the country of Tuvalu. See, one of the bare necessities when you actually have a country, regardless of how big it is to have a judicial system, to have that court system in order to maintain order, in order to punish criminals, in order to actually maintain that justice throughout the country. And that justice goes back to that inherently biblical concept found in the Noahide Code and throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament. One of the things you wouldn't expect of a nation of this size is a university. In fact, one of the things we learned from first talking to the people there is how much they valued their education system. I am standing in the USP, or the University of the South Pacific, which is the college in Tuvalu. In fact, you can see that there's a college here for many reasons, but one of which is because they're a Christian nation. See, in Christianity, you have to value education because we are given mandates to take dominion of the earth and to use our talents to be productive and fruitful. And the best way to do that is through having a quality education. Tuvalu has invested in that in the best way they know, which is to value and build a university here in Tuvalu, or the University of the South Pacific. And that's just one of the actual ways that the people of Tuvalu are getting increased education. The University of the South Pacific Tuvalu campus is actually very diverse. You have the computer lab over there, you have agricultural testing over there, and this just rounds out a part of the campus. But what you have to remember is that the higher degrees aren't actually conducted here. The USP is actually actually a cross-nation campus. There are many different nations that participate in this campus. Tuvalu is one of those. Now what is interesting is that you get your initial degree here, but then you can go off for a higher study in the country of Fiji or somewhere of that nature. And so it really rounds out a multinational education system that just Tuvalu alone, being a small nation, would not be able to participate in and produce as well. The reason that this campus is so important to the people of Tuvalu is because they value education, and this is their only outlet to higher education here in Tuvalu. In fact, that stems from their Christian roots, from the commands to take dominion of this earth and to use your talents in different ways that best suit what you have been given. Now, the crucial thing to understand about that is our best way to take dominion or to use those talents or whatever it is to specifically have the educational foundation to do that. And this is the way that the people of Tuvalu can obtain that foundation. One of Tuvalu's most nondescript and unassuming buildings is actually the most important, and that is the fishery. From a revenue point of view, the fishery building issues permits for the majority of the trade that is actually conducted in Tuvalu. What is that? That is actually fishing licenses. See, fishing licenses are dramatically important here in the economy of Tuvalu. Why? Because Tuvalu is some of the best fish in the world, specifically tuna, and the government of Tuvalu controls the licenses in order to be able to fish those tuna. So when big fishing companies come down here from America or China or wherever, they have to come to this building to get permits for their fishing. Construction of one of the government houses. But the interesting part about the construction is that on the outside of it, there's a grove of trees. This grove of trees is actually a grove of breadfruit trees, and it just symbolizes the importance of breadfruit in the Tuvalu culture. It is an important food that they use for everything. They use for nourishment, and they use for a starch, etc. But it's so important that they actually have the cultural elements of it in front of one of their government houses. This building behind me is the Bank of Tuvalu. See, Tuvalu has one bank, and that's right here. There's no exchange places, so if you come here to travel, you can't exchange money in the entire country. The only place you can go for financial transactions whatsoever is here. It's very simple, very easy if you're trying to do very simple things, but there's no actual physical infrastructure that you'd expect compared to other countries. We are standing on the northernmost point of the main Funafuti Island. During World War II, the structure behind me was used as an anti-aircraft gun by the Allies. There are anti-aircraft guns lining the entire island, but this is the only part of one remaining, and this is just the foundation. See, after Hurricane Bibi, there was rarely any structure left, but they found that this one was still left. In fact, this gun was used to shoot down and shoot at countless Japanese Zero jets or Japanese Zero planes as they flew over the island trying to bomb the American fuel tanks as well as the American runway. These guns were instrumental in making sure that our operations on this island could continue. The palooka field here grows something that is used in Tuvalu in place of breadfruit sometimes, or sometimes in place of rice. It's a starchy-like vegetable fruit substance that is used to just eat on tables. One of the things that's really unique about Tuvalu is the abundance of mopeds. There are very few cars and actually just a lot of mopeds everywhere. In fact, we were joking earlier that there's probably a 1-to-1 ratio between mopeds and people. And this is for really two different reasons. The first reason is just the convenience reason, that they're easier to handle on the small roads and streets that you have here in Tuvalu. That second reason is something that strikes more to the heart of the economic hardships that Tuvalu has. And that is the disparity between the price of cars and the price of mopeds. And in fact, that is something that we really have to understand when it comes to South Pacific countries, South Asian countries, or wherever. When you don't have a lot of income, the moped is an option that is very mobile, as well as being one that's a lot less expensive than the car, and that's why they use them here in Tuvalu. Okay, behind me is the only lake left in Tuvalu. In fact, a few years ago there were actually two, one here and one on the other side of the airfield, but that one's been filled up. In fact, originally there was one. The two different lakes were one giant lake, but then they built the airfield in World War II. So now there's just this lake left. this lake here is not actually that fresh of water. In fact, it's very salty because right on the other side of those trees is the ocean. There's the ocean, a small coral barrier, then the lake, then the pig farm. So you can see all here is all the unusable land for living that Tuvalu has. The lake, the ocean, and now the pig farm. Three very odd things to put next to each other. We are standing in front of a cargo container that encapsulates the old Tuvalu desalination plant. Now, it was built by Russia for Tuvalu, but you have to understand, there was no maintenance allotted to this. There was no understanding of how this thing worked, and in fact, it met a very similar ends to the Soviet Union. It just rusted away. Right here is the very expensive reverse osmosis pumps that were supposed to be for the emergency situations here in Tuvalu with their water. However, over here was the big problem. This was the control panel, the electronics, that specifically had rusted away and rusted out because of the wet climate here in Tuvalu. See, the Soviets had not planned to actually have anything of this scale last for a long period of time in Tuvalu. They didn't know about it. Specifically, they came down here, said, here's your plant, and left it, and then Tuvalu was left with a plant that they didn't know how to operate upon. So we now just have this giant container sitting here being ready to be hauled to the dump up there in the north of Tuvalu. Here we are at the Funafuti Lagoon Hotel, and this hotel is arguably the largest and nicest hotel in all of Tuvalu. But it illustrates one very important thing, and that is that while you have a tiny little nation, it doesn't have many exports. And because of that, the nation's had to rely a lot upon foreign aid that it's gained through many different methods. This hotel illustrates that, as we can see by this plaque. It was actually constructed by the government of China and gifted to the government of Tuvalu in 1993. That's the important thing to remember about this entire country, is that while you may have a country that doesn't have any exports, because of that, you can't have a country that makes any money. And so you have to have gifts like this hotel.